If you could, name and address, please.
My name is Jim Parker. I have pastored First Pentecostal Church for 25 years, retired 4 years ago. My son is pastor there now, and I've come to be an advocate for this prayer. And I noticed at the beginning of the meeting that I was privileged to say the Pledge of Allegiance with you. And that is a great honor, especially in the day that we live. And we said that, and that's a tremendous wording and a tremendous document in and of itself. It's concise in its manner, but it sets forth all the hope that this people would wonder in America. It identifies the participants of each and every one of us in the union of ourselves. Although recited by many, it still has the ability to be personal. But what we recited today is not in its original form. It was started, the Pledge of Allegiance was first published in the juvenile periodical, The Youth's Companion, on September the 8th, 1892. This is the original version of it. I pledge allegiance to my flag and the republic for which it stands, one nation indivisible with liberty and justice for all. And as our nation matured, new revelations were added. In 1924, they added the flag of the United States of America and substituted that for just the flag. And then our president in 1954, Eisenhower, urged Congress to put under God. And they made that a legislative move and a law. And that's where we get this finished product of I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That has stood the test of time. Regardless of creed or color or background, to be an American is one of the greatest privileges on the face of the earth. But to eliminate the truly greatest privilege is to be able to exercise your faith in any arena. The very founding of this country was because people couldn't pray. They couldn't worship. And so it was so important to them, they were willing to uproot their families and move to a wilderness and die and fertilize this country with faith. All of us here today have faith, regardless of what particular faith you ascribe yourself to. There's no such thing as an atheist. When the ground shakes, everybody looks up. And so, to eliminate prayer from a council meeting in this hall among you great people, that the people of Bonner Springs have entrusted to make the decisions that govern our lives. From our standpoint of people of faith, it gives us a blessed assurance to know that you took just a moment to remember maybe not him by name, but us, that we still matter, that we're still part of the citizenry. Regardless if you're Muslim or a Christian, none of that matters at this point. What matters is that we still hold these evidence to be true. That we were created, we have inalienable rights. And one of those rights is to pray. Whether silently or openly. And so I just want to appeal to you today to consider these things before you make these decisions. We did something at the beginning that I thought was remarkable, and that's that you took time for silence to honor the fallen heroes among us. I think it was very admirable. But can we not take time to honor the Creator, whatever you consider that to be, to at least acknowledge that there's something greater than we? That when we fall against those hard times and to make those hard decisions, we can have the rest assurance that we can at least meditate for the moment and think about what our decision is going to do for the generations to come and to come. In the 1920s, there was a preacher that he made some decisions that he thought was right. He agreed with the up and rising political party at the time. In the 30s, he still thought they were right, but then things began to change, and when their leadership came forth, he became a staunch fighter against them. At the end of his life, they asked him what was his greatest regrets. And he penned a very famous eulogy is what it really is, because it's filled with shame and regret. And this is what he said. He said, when they came for the Unionists, I didn't say anything because I wasn't a Unionist. When they came for the Socialists, I didn't say anything because I wasn't a socialist. And when they came for the Jews, I didn't say anything because I was not a Jew. And when they came for me, there was no one to say anything for me. His regret was not that he didn't fight for the right cause. His regret was that he didn't voice his opinion. And that's what I'm doing here today. I'm representing First Pentecostal Church, and the 150 people that go there that are good people that pray every day. We go to that church every day and we pray. We're instructed by our God to pray for you, our leadership, and we do that every day. I tell you, and I'm closing, I didn't mean to preach a sermon to you tonight, but I sort of feel like the Apostle Paul, that when he stood before King Agrippa and he was pleading his cause and his case, and he said, King Agrippa, believest thou the prophets? And before Agrippa could answer, he said, yea, I know thou believest. And I know you do too. Now, Tom, I don't know if you remember me. You do. And respectfully, I call you Tom. When I assumed the pastorate in 95 of First Pentecostal Church, a little bitty congregation, we began to grow. And so we got approval to build the building that's there now. And we were out building that, just a handful of people. Tom and his family owned the property just north of that. One night, as we were building that building, my wife and I was in prayer. And she rolled over and said, Daddy, I believe the Lord wants us to buy that property north of the church. I said, well, baby, if that's what you think the Lord said, I'll talk to the owner tomorrow. And Tom had been a tremendous neighbor, had a great reputation among our congregation. I remember that story. I got down off the roof and I walked over there and I called him over because his family would sit outside and watch us work. And I called him over. I said, Tom, have you considered selling your house? I'd like to buy it. And he looked at me and he said, you're not going to believe this, but my wife and I last night made a decision to sell our house. I said, well, I want it. He said, well, you don't know how much I want for it. I said, it doesn't matter. God said, buy it. And you're a good man, and I want it. I got my realtor to get in contact with him. We bought it. They turned around and rented it to us for some time. So whether you want to or not, we're all brothers and sisters in this faith thing. This council is important to us. The mayorship is important to us. We need you. We're trying to be a viable help in the community on a lower level, but we need to know that you're there with us. And so all I'm asking is, could you just give us a little bit of remembrance? It doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out prayer. It can be a moment of silence, whatever you dictate, but please, I appeal to you. Before you make this decision, think how this is going to affect everybody else. Now, if you vote against it, we're still going to love you and we're still going to pray for you. Because the good thing about it, you can't stop us from doing that yet. but little things matter. And the Bible says, despise not the day of small things. I know it's a small thing. Prayer, what is that? It's a big thing. If my people, which are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray, seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sins and heal their lands. Thank you for letting me speak.
Is there anyone else a resident that would like to speak?
I'm back. I noticed that the standard order of business did include an invocation, and I would like to stand in support of that. I can see why one may consider not having an invocation because separation of church and state, but I also know it's not illegal or against the law to have an invocation, and I think representing the cultural heritage of our town, which is Christian and of faith. If you drive around the town, you notice all the churches we have here, all of Christian faith, and the respect that we have for those community members, I think is important. And I would stand in support of that just for the heritage and the history and carrying that on into the future, because that is important to so many who still live here. Not that we're here, but that are still here today. And so I would ask that you consider re-implementing an invocation and having that prayer. And I know how important that is to the pastor that also comes and does that as well. And that role that it gives him and that level of importance that it places in his life is important to us as well. So I just ask that you consider all of those things. And I think it's great, and I don't think there's an issue with having it, and it's no big deal to have it. I think the significance outweighs any concerns with the invocation. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Tilly LaPlante, 13145 Swartz Road, and I stand in favor of the invocation.
Anyone else? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to adopt a resolution establishing a standard order of business at city council meetings.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Shannon, a second by Ms. Woods. And we'll go ahead and start here with you, Ms. Blanks.
Turn your
Can you
mic on.
clarify what we've decided? Oh, sorry. Can we clarify what we've decided to establish as the definition as the convocation? Is that a dumb question?
No, I believe what the motion was made for, the resolution that was.
She's asking for a
originally
definition of
placed in.
invocation.
Invocation, sorry.
Well, basically, there's two things going on. One is a resolution for the order of business. And then that order of business also does include an invocation. So I believe that would be the motion that was made is what was published in the agenda, which included the invocation.
Which would leave it then to be separately defining invocation? Or
Yes,
should
that we
be
would
done
have
first?
an invocation as part of.
And what's that defined as? Because I think everyone has a different term of what that could mean to them, correct?
That would be accurate.
Okay.
I believe the invocation
Is it
had
the
been
moment of
established.
silence?
Pardon me?
Is it the moment of silence that we did at the beginning?
I believe the invocation was, as has been established for quite a few years here, where we have offered and encouraged any pastors or anybody to come in and say a prayer or an invocation in regard to our city, our staff, our residents. And I think that there is as was pointed out by the resident that brought the resolution last council meeting, that this, in no way, this is done in the Supreme Court, this is done in Kansas City, Kansas, et cetera. I don't want to belabor it, but I believe the invocation that we've been following was the one that is being addressed at this point.
I'll tell you what, let me go ahead and I'll speak
Yeah,
here
I
real
think we
quickly.
just need clarity on that of what that exact definition is
Okay.
on line item 3.
I am the person who originally started the terminating the invocation. Yes, the Supreme Court does not, it is not unconstitutional. I think we need to clarify some things. I think there have been things that have been said that have been misconstrued, have been kind of turned. At no time did I say an invocation was unconstitutional. It can be constitutional. It can also contain prayer. That's never been an argument. The issue is that an invocation to be done constitutionally, you cannot have a religious test, either in its content or the individual giving it. By us only selecting those who were members, leaders of churches, we have basically put a religious test on the invocation. We can have an invocation, but it must be open to anybody, regardless of belief, who wishes to stand up there and provide that invocation. The question becomes is that what we want, is an invocation that could be multitude of beliefs, since we're here for business, public business. We're here for government business. That's where my position came from, so I'll let you go ahead and continue on then.
Sorry.
Ms. Planks has the floor right now.
I just want to make sure that because if we're going to vote on this, right, are we basing it off the new invocation of just a moment of silence?
No, they're wanting to do an invocation.
With
This-
prayer.
This would include an invocation with
Okay.
someone speaking, giving that invocation.
Personally, I'm indifferent. I see feelings or passions on either side of the aisle. I think for me, as Tyler had said, basing it off Christianity, Bonner is growing and we're going to continue to see a lot of growth. And there's a lot more religions that aren't based on Christianity. And if you know me, I pride myself on being very welcoming of everybody, of all creeds and sex, religion, everything. As long as you're a good person, that's what matters to me. I think we just need to be careful. When I said it in my first city council meeting, I was truly shocked that we prayed. I think I wasn't expecting it at a government-based meeting. I do believe in separation of church and state. I was just very shocked, only because I put myself in someone else's shoes of somebody who just joined our community, and the best way to learn about what's going on in your community is coming to a city council meeting. And I just don't want to ever make anyone feel uncomfortable or that they're not welcome. And I'm not saying that that's what Christianity does or the goal of it is, so don't twist my words on that. But I would say if we're going to allow prayer, then we need to really set the standard that it's all prayer, even if it's ones that we don't agree with or coming from religions or religious leaders that we don't necessarily agree with. And if that's the case, then that's something we need to not just put in the agenda, but like truly make public to everybody in the community that they're welcome to come speak and give an invocation. I don't want to make anyone feel welcome or feel discouraged from getting involved if they come to a meeting and they don't feel like they are represented, or it might be mistook as not being welcomed. So I'm just indifferent on it, I guess. Amy Gibbs, the owner of Third Space, could not be here tonight, but she asked me to read something for her. To my esteemed colleagues and fellow partners in the betterment of Bonner. I recognize that while I'm not often in attendance at city council meetings, I'm aware and supportive as well as affected by the decisions that are made there. I would love to see the tradition of beginning these important meetings with prayer upheld, since these prayers are largely an articulation of the desire of wisdom, protection, prosperity, and unity. In unity, I think it highly valuable to continue this verbal affirmation of our common interest in the heart of Bonner Springs. I am sorry to not be able to be there in person to express this heartfelt desire, but I humbly ask that this request be considered. With respect and support of you all, Amy Gibbs, owner of Third Space Coffee. And even on that note, while I may not wholeheartedly agree with Amy, again, I think everybody's beliefs, everybody's opinions are valued, but I think it's about trying to find a way to be inclusive of all of those. So I'll pass it over to my council members, but there's kind of my thoughts on that.
Okay. Ms. Long?
Thank you for speaking, everyone who came up to speak. And the pastor brings up a few good points about liberty and justice for all. Me, as a citizen of Bonner Springs, I'm up here as a representation of people in my ward. I do not know for sure that everyone in my ward is a Christian. I do not know for sure that everyone in Bonner Springs is a Christian. I do know that there are people who are not, and I have to represent those people as well. I am a person of prayer. I am a person of faith. I pray for this council and everyone in this room. I pray for the people that I love, but I don't need to do that publicly in order for those prayers to be validated. I feel like a moment of silence is more than adequate for those of us who are here to include everyone, because the pastor also talked about and justice for all. And justice, liberty and justice for all means everyone. That means every person who lives here has the right to choose what religion they follow, who they pray to, how they pray, and they don't have to pray when they come in this room. If we are going to have an invocation that includes prayer, I would really recommend that we have at least some sort of definition of what type of prayer is allowed and who is allowed to conduct the prayer. Also, maybe even just a forewarning to the people who are in the room that we are going to pray and that it is voluntary. And if they would not like to participate, they don't have to. So I think that's the way that we're inclusive. So me sitting up here talking about prayer in a public space is me representing my ward of Ward 1. It is, not about me, Cassandra, the person, and what I do at church, at home, and wherever I'm at. It doesn't have to do with me. It's who I represent. And I can't guarantee that me recommending that we have a prayer before every single meeting, and when I think about what the prayer is, in order for me to adequately represent the people in my ward, I'd need to be able to tell them, yes, it's open to everyone. Yes, it's open to any religion. Yes, anyone can come in and say the prayer. I cannot say that right now. So maybe if that's something someone could clarify for me, I'd be able to vote a little bit more with more education, a little bit more knowledge. So, thank you.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes, I want to thank the pastor for his kind words.
Is his mic on?
Yours. McMahon, for yours.
Might lean
This
forward a bit.
country was founded on religious freedom, not freedom from religion, which includes all types of faith. I think that as you read the Federalist Papers, you'll see that our founding fathers thought it was very important that we establish this. It happens all the time in all the houses of Congress, the Senate. It happens in our State House here in Kansas on both floors. I think it's appropriate that we do it here also. Thank you.
Mr. McMahon?
Thank you. I appreciate my colleagues here and their input and the way they process all of this and stuff. Pastor, thank you for coming up. You quoted 2 Chronicles 7, and you did it. I already had it on my phone, so I don't need to re-say it again. you know, if I see this, prayer is important. We took it out of schools, and our schools have gone to hell. I think that if, you know, we don't want to offend anybody, but how about the people that want to pray? Right? Tyler, you did an eloquent job explaining that this is mainly Bonner Springs has a lot of Christian churches here. And I'm not opposed to if someone comes in and they're not Christian and they want to have a prayer, then that's fine. That's what comes with it. Then the following meeting, maybe we'll have somebody that's a Christian that will pray. Because we haven't had any issues in the past that I'm aware of, but we're concerned about the future. I feel like prayer is necessary. This building is unique when we're here together, and it's not because of the building, but it's because of the people who are in the building. And some people still pray over their meals in public. And I believe God honors, as stated in the infallible Word of God, that He honors nations, He honors towns that honor Him. He blesses them. And I believe some of the prayers that we had by Pastor Fenoy was absolutely beautiful because it was just praying over the safety of our first responders. And it's just it's communicating with the Father, asking Him to do these things. I think we need to evaluate where the steps or where we have gone when we decided that we're going to take God out of the picture. Is that where we want to be? Right? And if someone, you know, will it make a difference if we decided, well, we're not going to pray, we'll have a moment of silence? Perhaps not. If you go into Revelations, it's like we're heading that way anyway. Things got to happen. Pieces have to be in the place. So I'm a big proponent for prayer. I think it's important. I think it reflects, you know, Amy for saying what she said. She's a good woman, runs a business. I run a business. If I didn't have a relationship with God, I've probably already done something to myself. But I haven't. But I stand for it. I think, you know, if someone's offended by it, then we can have a conversation later on down the road.
Ms. Woods?
Microphone.
Oh, okay. First of all, the condition of the schools has not gone to hell because of people like your son and things like that, okay?
I stand corrected.
I do agree that we need to continue prayer. And you can say higher power or whatever.
Ms. Gurley?
I've been sitting with this since the last meeting, and I had to corral my thoughts into written word, so forgive me. Our role as council members is to represent everyone in the city of Bonner Springs. We are tasked with making decisions that benefit our city as a whole, so that must include all faiths as well as no faith. More than 28% of adult Americans are non-religious. Government endorsement of prayer will inevitably exclude more than 1/4 of the population and create division. For me personally, religion on the taxpayer's time and the taxpayer's dime is inappropriate. On this specific topic, the only way to avoid excluding people is to not include an invocation at all. For the past 8 years, I've been proud to be a member of this group of people. We have a high level of respect for each other, even when we disagree. We've worked through some big issues together, and yet something that has no impact on the business of the city finds us at odds, and I really wish it didn't.
Mr. Gibb?
I think, you know, we vote on everything every night. We're here to make hard decisions, not the easy ones. This, to me, is, you know, 5 of the decisions I've made tonight are not going to include everyone, and they're going to upset a lot of people. But we go with, you know, more towards the democracy, the majority rules, and as your statistics state, you know, the majority definitely is faith-based of some sort. So in favor of it. And this is an amendable document, so if the hypotheticals come true that we have an overabundance of people attending our meetings, which I would love, but they don't, and they take over, then we can adjust it. We can modify it. But until that happens, I'm very much in favor of it.
Oh, boy. You last. Oh, I'm definitely in favor of it. I'm very, very proud to say that Jesus is my Lord and Savior. Because as Mark mentioned, if it weren't for him, I don't know where I'd have been. I have a good wife, but I grew up like all of you, but my grandmother, there was something about her, and she had a faith. But she didn't beat people over the head with it, she just lived it. And it was given to me, it was passed down to me, and since I've been little, I've always felt that, why am I so lucky? Why am I so fortunate? Well, I think I know. In fact, I do know. God chose me right from the beginning. But what I did was not necessarily for him from the beginning. It was for me, what I wanted to do. Having been blessed to be on this council for all this time, 18 years, I've seen a lot of things. I've seen the votes make people happy, make people unhappy. But the voting for invocation and the way it's been handled, to know that we are being, and Pastor, as you said, you're blessing us. You're blessing our town, our first responders, our families. What greater thing is that? And why is that so detrimental? I know I've heard the things about church and state and all that, but there is a God. He made us. And why we don't take a few moments to thank him, and we're concerned about what maybe other people think. Well, other people are going to think, as I did. I didn't understand a lot of it when I was younger, but I do now. And what's happening to all of us up here, I think, was the thing that I didn't want to have happen. I didn't want to see anybody be having to put their beliefs out in front of everybody, or their thoughts. I wanted it just to continue as it was, because as Mark mentioned, it wasn't broken. Things have gone, I believe, well, and for me to even remotely think about taking God out of here, I can't do it. And so I definitely support the invocation.
Mr. Shannon? Okay, anybody else have anything else to add?
I just want to, I got a text message. Schools aren't going to hell. I'm sorry. That was a tongue in cheek. I'm almost 60, okay? So I'm going to reel it back. We have I love public schools. I think it's important and we have fantastic people teaching, people of faith that work in public schools. And we're so appreciative of them, and it's so important. And so listen, you can't govern morality, right? But if we can just maintain something, the God that created this universe and show some sort of appreciation, I think we benefit as a community by doing that.
Anyone else? Seeing nothing else? If you'd call for the vote, please.
Voting on a resolution to establish a standard order of business at council meetings. Kip?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
Yes.
Blanks,
Yes.
McMahon,
Yes.
Reeves,
Yes.
Gurley,
No.
Wood,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay, that concludes our regular business for this evening. It's time for reports. On to the city manager.
I'm sorry. I do want to just make sure with the passage of the last resolution, I didn't want to mention, I was going to mention this, but it may be prudent to bring a policy. I think that came up a little bit, but I just want to make sure that there is some clarity in terms of how people can go about providing an invocation, if that makes sense to everybody, or I'm just offering that as a suggestion. Maybe talk to the mayor or me, but I do know that it's a very common thing to have, so that people do know how to go about signing up and making sure that that is an inclusive process. So I offer that. Other news, pool opening is the 25th, so this is, again, a wonderful opportunity to get out and recreate in Bonner Springs. I know passes are being sold currently, and look forward to another season at the Bonner Springs Aquatic Center. The 138th Street project that is due for bidding June 1st, that's still the plan. The actual construction date is still kind of up in the air a little bit as the state has offered some suggestions in terms of when to start that to not impact have a longer construction cycle with the winter months coming up. So I do want to make sure that, again, that project, oof, that's loud. Not used to sitting down here, so I was going to let Chrissy go ahead and do this, but figured I'd go for it. But the project is still due to bid on June 1st. Again, the construction schedule will just be known after that all comes in. And exciting news related to that, because of some of the delays, serendipitously, I suppose, we did receive some additional funding from the Mid-American Regional Council in the amount of a little over $500,000 towards that project. So the total, the initial grant that we received a few years ago was about $3.1 million, $3.2 million. In the past 9 months, probably, we received the $250,000 sort of tranche that came to us, and now we have this additional $500,000, so we're almost at $4 million of this project, which is exciting news as far as balancing the delay with some additional money that's become available. So again, some good news there. And then second to last, do want to point out our contractor engineering firm that's working on our water plant did come out with I think a good review of the status of the project, the water plant project, and then just some sort of internal review of what that facility is looking like. So again, that was posted on our city page and then shared on our website as well. So that's available for folks to learn about that project. And then lastly, this has been something that I've been happy to go to over the years. The Memorial Day service will once again take place at the Bonner Springs Cemetery, and that would be on the 27th at 10 a.m. up at the Soldiers Circle, which is the center part of the cemetery. So again, some good things going on in the city, but that is all I have today. So other than the pen on my shirt now. So.
That brings us on to the council items. We'll start with you, Mr. McMahon.
Thank you. To really dive into the deep stuff here. I had a conversation with a gentleman when we were talking about the cemetery, and just real quick on a side note, Nettleton just runs everywhere, doesn't it? There's a part of Nettleton back behind the cemetery and going up the road and back behind
Behind the
Walmart.
cemetery is Metropolitan.
That's not Nettleton?
That's Metropolitan.
That's Metropolitan. Okay, I stand corrected. Very good. All right, then I'll abandon that thought. A waterless toiletry at the cemetery, perhaps. And maybe that's something that I'm throwing out that out there and see if that's something that we can, make doable. I mean, people are there all the time, right? And I don't think we have any public toiletry at all to offer or have. Do we have?
I'm aware of.
I'm not, yeah, and maybe if it's doable, let's look at it, and if not, then we can at least say we've thought about it. And here's a big one, a fire hydrant needs to be painted. My neighbor came over and said at 116 Cypress, we need to paint, he said, what can we do to get our fire hydrant painted? And I don't know what the cycle is on going through and painting fire hydrants and stuff like that. It looks a little disheveled, if you will, I mean, but,
I can kind of address that a little bit. That is, I don't know necessarily if the painting per se is sort of the aesthetic side of things a little bit. There is some method to the madness. You'll see the caps are different colors, and that actually indicates the pressures of the lines so that if those do need to get opened up, the color sort of coordinates to what the pressure is. So again, people in the field know that. That is part of probably a little bit more of our, on the water side of things. And as we've tried to kind of get in better shape from a preventative maintenance standpoint, so that's exercising valves and making sure that if we have a water line down in a certain area or break, that we turn the water off and it doesn't turn half of the town down. It's called valve exercising. We are working diligently to get that program up to a high level. I'll tell you that it's come a long way. Painting of the hydrant too is certainly, I think, part of that. But I know those conversations are things that are happening between Public Works and the fire department in terms of how to go about that in an efficient way. But I have the address down.
yeah, it's fine.
116.
Is it frowned on if a resident paints their?
I was just gonna ask, is there anything in
Yeah.
the ordinance precludes a concerned council member from painting the fire hydrant? by
I would
itself?
caution against it for the reasons that I kind of mentioned, that again, there is a little bit of method to the madness in terms of the color on the cap. You'll also find, if you go around different areas, some people, I think ours are all yellow, but then if you go to KCK, they're all red.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of, as you can imagine, just things like that. But if there is a non-aesthetic issue, operational issue with the hydrant, that's a paramount thing. So we'll start there.
That's good. Thank you.
Ms. Woods?
I just am so impressed with how much goes on in the city for young people in the summer. And it was in the report that everybody needs to let everybody know that there's stuff for every age going on in the city this summer. And you can sign up for sitting classes, you can sign up for, yeah, so much that I wish everybody would know. I wish we could go around the street with a loud, yeah.
Sean,
General?
can
Speaker?
Can you talk to the K-7 reclass that you mentioned in your report?
Sure. So the transportation network in the metro, generally speaking, is somewhat overseen by the Mid-American Regional Council. That's done, and that's just for clarity's sake. Mid-American Regional Council is considered a council of governments, so it's a cog of a bunch of cities and counties that kind of come together to efficiently spend funds like the STP grant for 138th Street, right? So again, the reclassification is a program that happens, I think, every 2 years or so, that Mark just goes out and asks everybody, are there any changes in your street network on a local level that we need to take into consideration on the broader regional level? 130, K7, formerly 130th Street, There's my old plug for old streets and names, but the idea of that corridor, as many of you know, was to go about looking at that as an elevated highway between roughly Leavenworth and Olathe. That was roughly 15 years ago, and I think we've been pushing KDOT to revisit that plan to at least get it to a place that if we're not going to build an elevated highway or a freeway, what can we do? Because it's a high dollar amount to do all of those things. What can we do to improve traffic flow? To say, include some additional turn lanes to go south on Kansas, or K7 from Kansas Avenue, or northbound, right? Sort of low cost, I would say, comparative to elevated highways, solutions to address some of the traffic flow issues. So that's sort of the long-winded conversation about that. The classification is really meant to, I think, restart that conversation, at least to say, we look at this not as a freeway going through our community, and this is, I think, reflective of the comments that I've heard over the years from the council and the public generally. We look at this as a principal arterial, a huge corridor that goes through our community that's important to us from a commerce standpoint, as well as just mobility generally. So again, I don't want to say it's a ceremonial change, because it's more than that, but it does put, I think, folks on notice, so to speak, to say we need to revisit this plan and consider this as a principal arterial, like it's shown in Leavenworth, like it's shown in Olathe, and try to find ways to make that corridor work for that purpose, not as a flyover Bonner Springs purpose.
Thank you. The only other thing I had is that May 30th is the first rehearsal for City Band. So head to the high school with your instrument, and we will have rehearsal only that night. We start concerts the following Thursday.
Mr. Shannon? Ms. Blanks?
Last week was City Clerk Week, so I just want to thank Chris for everything that she does. She wears many, 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 many hats. So again, thank you. I'm happy that that's newly dedicated to city clerks. I see the pavilion is coming along really well, which is awesome. Do we have a done date on that? Or is it just arriving in pieces and they're putting it up as they go?
More of the latter.
Okay.
The trusses were going up today. I think we were still waiting on delivery of the roof structure still, but optimistically by June 1st.
Awesome. Thank you. I also want to thank Mark and Cassandra for joining. All three of us went to the Feed His Lambs golf tournament, which was awesome. I believe they raised about $8,000, which is great for their very first tournament. So also thank you to Captain Kraus for putting on that golf tournament and inviting me. I also just want to bring up, and I know Chris and Megan and I have discussed this, and it's in, I believe, an ordinance about our caterer's license. Now that we are doing more Street Fest and we'll have common consumption, which means we can have liquor licensed businesses now be invited as vendors. As it states right now, they're required to have a state license, which is $1,000, but they're also to require a Bonner Springs license, which is also $1,000. I feel like that is quite steep when we only have a handful of events a year that CCA would be attached to the special use permit. So I would really like the opportunity to review that. I do think that there should be some sort of fee to receive, but I just don't know if $1,000 seems fair from the city, since the state is already receiving that as well. So I don't know how we go about reviewing that, or what the steps are for that.
For clarification, that's $1,000 for a 2-year license.
2 years?
Yep. And that would be changeable through an ordinance that would update the code.
Okay. Is that, sorry, forgive me, this is my first time discussing about an updated ordinance. Is that just something we have discussion with staff, and then eventually, if we decide to proceed forward, it's presented to council?
Yeah, I think, just to clarify, is the ordinance, does the ordinance specify the amount, or is it within the fee schedule?
The amount is through the fee schedule.
Right, so it's not changing the ordinance, it would be amending the fee schedule, which you all consider annually as we look through the budget. So if the substance of the ordinance is not in question, it would be more of the fee that would need to be reviewed, which, again, you all review that. I can't remember exactly when.
We usually review those in December.
Okay, thank you. Lastly, I just want to say that I really appreciate our council in the sense that we are always able to have really open dialogue conversation. And I really appreciated what everyone had to speak tonight. I could tell that everyone spoke from their heart, which was great. And I just always remember when joining the council, it's just been very made clear that no matter what our beliefs are, we're all on the same page of the betterment of Bonner and do no harm on behalf of the citizens. So just thank you for everybody's open dialogue in a really constructive manner. You don't really find that these days, so I appreciate it.
Ms. Long?
Yeah, Emily already covered the pavilion and also the Feed as Lambs golf tournament, so thank you with that. But also the Rotary did a spectacular job for fundraising for Von Trent, which is also an organization who does so much for the residents of Bonner Springs. So appreciated the hard work and everything that went into that and everybody that participated. Also, Chris, yeah, you do so much work here, and it's not an easy job, and there's a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of different people and personalities, so thank you for all that you do to keep everything moving along smoothly. Yeah, and along those lines with the farmers market, we are up and running every single weekend, so make sure you're coming out 8 to noon on Saturdays.
Mr. Reeves?
Yeah, on our new farmer's market pavilion, I've talked to Chris, I believe, and I understand that people will be able to park underneath that when it's not in use as a pavilion, is that correct? And that's fine, but I'm also wondering if we need to consider finding some more parking places around town. If there's some places that we can come up with that we can use for parking on those days when it's full, would probably be beneficial to our community. I know that's a big problem, so anyway, I just thought I'd put that out there. And thank you again to Chris for, I ask her questions all the time, and she seems to come up with reasonable answers for me, and so I thank her for that. And also, Matt Beats, he's been very understanding the times I go down there and talk to him about our water plant and so forth, and he's been very knowledgeable about what's going on down there, what goes where, why it goes here, and what it does when it goes through there. So I thank him very much.
And with that, that brings us to the mayor's report. You saw my report was attached to all the activities I've been involved in this last 3 weeks. A couple quick things. I finally found some time to go by and introduce myself to Wendy Bowman, who's our new director at the Von Trent. And I saw Miss Blanks was in there too. She was going through there, doing a little pony show for someone. I think Reverend
Pastor Bill Kearns.
So it was just nice. If you get a chance to go by, say hi. She's got some energy and some additional things she'd like to hopefully accomplish with Von Trent and expanding some hours and such. So hopefully she's successful in that area. Also, real quickly, City Clerk wanted me to specify, if you did receive an email, if you haven't printed off from that email from the City Clerk, that's what's contained in this envelope. And so make sure you fill that information out. That's substantial interest forms that you have to fill out yearly. If you're comfortable with it, she would also like to get a copy of it for her files. If the auditors come in and request information, if she has it available, it's easier than having to go down, get the public information documents from downtown, so. So if you get that filled out, and did you find out, does this have to be mailed by us individually, or can the city mail these?
I don't have an answer for that yet.
Okay, so, I know, but if you get it filled out, and if you haven't sent it in yet, if she gets an answer, I'll assume you'll send out a general email to everyone and let us know. With that, if there's nothing else, question-wise, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we adjourn at this time.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Reeves and a second by Mr. Shannon. He beat you to it, so. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?